When I turned 78, I baked bread. No one came. I had been waiting all day, the house filled with warmth, the smell of sourdough rising the same recipe my late husband loved. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels. Birthdays should be joyful, a reminder you still matter, that your family remembers you. At least, that's what I believed. That morning, I tied on my apron, the old white one with blue stitching, and started kneading the dough. My kitchen window was cracked open, and the autumn air slipped inside, carrying the sound of children laughing somewhere down the street. I smiled, imagining my own grandchildren, their little hands reaching for fresh bread faces dusted with flour as we baked together. That was the picture in my heart. I wanted everything to be perfect. I polished the silver forks at the table with my best china and placed a vase of yellow roses in the very center. Yellow had been my husband's favorite. He used to say they carried sunlight even on the darkest days. So I filled the room with them, hoping they would make everyone smile. I could almost hear my husband whisper, "You did good, Evelyn. It smells like home." I looked at the clock. 5 o'clock sharp. They said they'd be here by 5. I smoothed down my navy dress, the one with pearl buttons. It wasn't new, but it was the same one my son once said made me look elegant. The candles were lit, their flames trembling gently. The bread sat in a wicker basket, a white cloth draped across it to keep the warmth inside. I took one last look, proud of how it all turned out. This wasn't just a dinner, it was love baked and folded into every detail. 5:15. Still no car pulling in. I checked my phone, no messages. No missed calls. Maybe they're stuck in traffic, I whispered to myself. It happens. Of course it happens. The clock ticked louder. The house seemed to stretch into an uncomfortable silence. At 5:45, I lit the second set of candles because the first ones had already burned too low. I tried calling my daughter-in-law. No answer. I stared at the empty chairs. 8 places carefully set with name cards. Even the children's spots with smaller glasses of apple juice instead of wine. The bread grew cold on the table. The butter softened into a puddle. And the roses began to droop, their petals curling as if they too were tired of waiting. At 6:30, I tried again. Still no one. Still silence. The kitchen smelled sweet and heavy, but I felt the weight of it pressing down like the smell belonged to a feast meant for ghosts. I sat down at the head of the table, my chair creaking beneath me. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. The minutes dragged. The candles sputtered. The bread turned hard. By 7, my hands were trembling. I told myself again and again something came up. They'll call. They'll explain. But deep down, I felt it. The hollowness of that room. The cruel silence of 8 empty chairs. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. And I was left alone with it. By 7:30, I could no longer sit still. The candles were stubs leaning in their holders. The butter had melted into a golden pool. The bread, once warm, was now a stone. I picked up my phone. Maybe a message I missed. Maybe some reason. Anything. The screen lit my face, and I tapped on it with shaking hands. No texts. No calls. But then a notification from Instagram. I don't use it much. I only keep it to peek at the grandchildren's pictures. School plays soccer games, little drawings they bring home. It makes me feel close. I tapped it open, and there it was. A photo so bright it felt like sunlight slapping me across the face. My son, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren. Smiling wide wine glasses raised high a fire pit glowing behind them, friends gathered all around. The caption read, "Happy family with the best people." The best people. But I wasn't there. I froze. The room spun around me. I scrolled down. Another picture, the children roasting marshmallows, their little faces glowing with laughter. Another Pamela, my daughter-in-law, posing in her new dress, a glass of champagne in her hand, captioned grateful for tonight's family. Family. As if I didn't exist. I stared at the word until it blurred. The laughter in those photos was a blade. Every smile cut deep. I whispered into the silence. They knew it was my birthday. They knew. And they chose this instead. My throat closed tight. The phone slipped from my hand, landing with a thud on the table. The bread basket sat there, a cruel reminder of what I had prepared. I reached for a slice anyway. The crust was tough. It crumbled dry in my mouth. I chewed not because I was hungry, but because I needed something to fill the hollow ache inside me. I thought of the way I used to bake bread when my husband was alive. He would sit at the table, a newspaper folded beside him, and say, "Evelyn, the smell of this bread is the smell of home." Now, the smell was the smell of betrayal. My eyes burned. I wiped them with my sleeve, but the tears kept falling. I stood up, walked to the sink, and turned on the faucet. Water rushed loud, too loud, as if it wanted to drown out the silence of the house. I gripped the counter, my knuckles white. "They replaced me," I whispered. "On my own birthday?" I turned off the water, the sudden silence making the house feel even emptier. I walked back to the table, my chair still warm from where I had been sitting. The roses had begun to sag, petals loosening, dropping quietly onto the tablecloth. I picked one up, held it between my fingers, and thought of him. My husband would have been furious. Not at me. Never at me. But at them. For treating his wife this way. I remembered his voice firm, but gentle. "Evelyn, never let them forget your worth." But tonight, my worth had been erased. The bread, the roses, the candles, all for nothing. I sat down again. The phone buzzed once more. Another picture. This time, a video. Pamela's voice loud and polished, saying cheers to family. The camera panned around. Friends laughed. Children clapped. My son smiled, his arm around her shoulders. They looked complete. Complete without me. I pressed my hand to my chest. The ache was unbearable, like something heavy pressing down on my ribs. I whispered they wanted me to see. They wanted me to know I wasn't part of this anymore. I closed the app. I couldn't bear it. The house groaned in the quiet. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second louder as if mocking me. 8 o'clock. 9 o'clock. Still alone. Finally, I stood. I blew out the last candle. Smoke curled upward, a thin gray ribbon disappearing into the air just like the years I had given them. I gathered the dishes, my hands trembling. I placed the untouched plates back into the cabinet. The silver forks clinked too loudly in the empty room. When I lifted the breadbasket, crumbs spilled onto the table. I brushed them away slowly, as though erasing the evidence of my hope. I covered the bread, tucked it into the refrigerator. Perhaps tomorrow I would slice it, share it with the neighbors. Someone should enjoy it. Because clearly my own family would not. I switched off the dining room light. The house plunged into shadow. But in the glass of the window, I caught my reflection. An old woman with weary eyes standing in a room, too big a room, too empty. I stared at her, at myself, and for the first time I saw what they saw, someone they believed they no longer needed. But they were wrong. They may have erased me tonight, but I would not disappear. I did not sleep that night. The bed felt too large, too cold without him beside me. Every creak of the house, every shift of the wind kept me awake. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling. The shadows moved slowly, stretching long with the moonlight. My mind replayed the evening, the bread, the empty chairs, the glowing photos of them celebrating without me. I turned on the lamp, the soft yellow glow spilling across the quilt. On my nightstand was a framed photo. My son, just a boy, then missing his front teeth, his small hand holding mine. I traced the glass with trembling fingers. When had that little boy stopped seeing me as home? I closed my eyes, but more memories rushed in. Little pieces of the past I had ignored. Times that should have warned me. Tommy's 4th birthday. I remember the balloons, the cake with blue frosting. I had driven an hour, a gift wrapped in my lap, smiling the whole way. But when I arrived, Pamela met me at the door. "Oh, Evelyn," she said sweetly, "didn't Elliot tell you we moved the party to tomorrow?" Behind her, I could hear laughter. Children singing. I could see balloons floating. My heart dropped. I left without a word. Later, when I asked my son, he looked confused. "Tomorrow, Mom, the party was today." Pamela had lied. Emma's first day of school. I had asked 3 times what time they were dropping her off. Super early, Pamela told me. Like 7 a.m. Too early for you. But I went anyway. The teacher told me Emma had been dropped off at 8:30. Normal time. And I had missed it. Missed her little wave. Christmas. 2 years ago. Pamela called me, her voice dripping with concern. "Evelyn Elliott's so overwhelmed this year. We'll keep it small. Just immediate family." I spent Christmas alone watching an old movie reheating leftovers. Later, I saw the photos online. A giant tree, a table full of people. Neighbors, college friends, even Pamela's cousins. Everyone. Except me. One by one, these memories lined up. Like puzzle pieces snapping together. It hadn't been mistakes. It hadn't been forgetfulness. It was deliberate, planned. Pamela had been pushing me out inch by inch until I was invisible. The clock read 2 a.m. My chest felt tight. I rose, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and padded downstairs. The dining room still smelled faintly of bread. The roses now wilted, their petals scattered across the table. I picked one up, brown at the edges, its life fading fast. I carried it to the trash bin, but paused. Something in me resisted. Instead, I pressed the dead rose between the pages of my husband's Bible. A reminder. Not of beauty, but of betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table, the lamp humming softly overhead. The phone lay there, black screen silent now. I picked it up again, scrolling back months. Photo after photo. Pamela smiling. My son smiling. Children smiling. All without me. And the captions. Always the same. Grateful for family. The best people. My world. But never me. At dawn, the light crept into the kitchen. Pale gray, then soft gold. I sat watching the sun rise through the curtains. I hadn't closed my eyes once. I felt hollow, but also sharper. Like glass, broken but cutting. I whispered to myself they wanted me gone. But I am still here. The words echoed fragile but firm. And for the first time in years, I no longer believed their version of love. I would find the truth. I would not be erased again. The morning came heavy. My eyes were swollen, my body aching from the sleepless night. I poured myself coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the table where the bread still waited. The house smelled stale, like disappointment baked into the walls. I thought of calling them my son, even Pamela, to ask why, to demand an answer. But then I stopped. What would they say? Another excuse? Another misunderstanding? Another careful lie? I had swallowed those lies before. I would not again. A knock at the door startled me. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and walked slowly to answer. It was my neighbor Margaret, a kind woman, 65, with a laugh like church bells. She held a small container. "Morning, Evelyn," she said softly. "I baked extra muffins. Thought you might like some." Her eyes searched my face. She saw it. The tiredness. The sadness I couldn't hide. I forced a smile. "Thank you, Margaret. You're very kind." She hesitated. "We're having a little gathering tonight. Just a few friends from the street. Why don't you come? It'll cheer you up." I almost said no. I wanted to curl into my chair, let the world pass by. But something in me shifted. If my family no longer saw me, then maybe my friends would. "Yes," I whispered. "I'll come." Margaret smiled warmly. "Good. We'd love to have you."
When she left, I looked back at the breadbasket.
Still full. Still untouched. I placed the loaves in a bag. Maybe I would take them tonight. Share them with people who would actually eat them. Anything to keep my hands busy. Anything to keep my mind from replaying those photos again. By evening, I changed into a fresh blouse, light blue with tiny flowers. I pinned on a silver brooch my husband once gave me. For courage. The air was crisp outside, leaves crunching beneath my shoes. Margaret's house glowed with light voices drifting from the porch. When I stepped inside, warmth enveloped me. Laughter, the clink of glasses, the smell of roasted chicken. It felt alive. Something I hadn't felt in years. "Evelyn, so glad you came." Voices welcomed me. Hands patted my arm. Smiles met my tired eyes.
For a moment, I felt seen again.
I set the bread on the table. Someone sliced it quickly, steam still curling from the center. "Oh, this is wonderful," they said. "It tastes like home." My throat tightened. Finally, someone remembered what it meant. But then I saw her, Pamela, standing at the far end of the room, a glass of wine in hand, her hair perfectly styled, her smile polished and sharp. I froze. Why was she here? Margaret noticed my surprise. "Oh, Evelyn, I hope you don't mind." Pamela stopped by to drop something off, and we insisted she stay.
My heart pounded.
Of course. Of course she would find her way into this night, too. She walked toward me, heels clicking softly on the floor. "Well, if it isn't the birthday girl." Her voice carried just enough sweetness to sting. I forced a nod. "Pamela." She leaned close, her perfume sharp and heavy. "You didn't really think they forgot your birthday, did you?" I blinked. Her smile widened. "They just had better plans. You understand, right? You're old. You can't keep up." Her words sliced deep. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Before I could answer, she raised her glass high, turning to the others. "Everyone knows Evelyn," she announced loudly, her voice filling the room. "She's the family ATM, always ready with her checkbook. I stood frozen humiliation burning my skin. She wasn't whispering this time. She wasn't hiding it. She was branding me out loud before my friends. I felt my knees weaken. The room blurred, but I forced myself still. I would not cry. Not here. Not for her. Pamela sipped her wine, smiling as though nothing had happened. Conversation stumbled back to life, but the words rang hollow in my ears. Inside me, something cracked, but it was not weakness. It was resolve. I would not be their ATM. I would not be erased. And Pamela, she had just gone too far. The laughter faded. Or maybe it never came, not really. Only Pamela laughed, and the sound echoed sharp and cruel. I stood frozen, my hand gripping the edge of the table. The bread I had baked lay in slices half-eaten by guests who avoided my eyes. The shame burned hotter than the oven I had lit that morning. Pamela's words replayed in my head, family ATM. As if decades of love, decades of sacrifice were reduced to cash withdrawals. I thought of every school trip I paid for, every camp fee, every pair of sneakers, every mortgage payment I had secretly covered for them. All those nights I went without just so my son wouldn't feel the weight of bills piling up. And this was what I was now. Not mother, not grandmother, not Evelyn, just an ATM. I felt my breath grow shallow. The walls of Margaret's dining room seemed to close in. The chatter blurred into static. I excused myself quietly, my voice trembling. I need some air. No one stopped me. I stepped outside, the night air hitting me cold. The porch light flickered overhead. The street lay empty, silent, but for the rustle of leaves. I gripped the railing, my knuckles white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But no sound came. Only the ache in my chest growing heavier, pressing down until I thought I might collapse. I whispered into the darkness, after everything, is this truly who I am to them? A single tear slipped down, then another until my vision blurred completely. The door creaked behind me. It was Margaret. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Evelyn, she said softly, don't let her words break you. Margaret's eyes glistened. She wants control. She wants to define you. But you know better? And so do we? She pressed something warm into my hands. A napkin-wrapped slice of my own bread. Take this. It's yours. Don't let her steal even that. I nodded weakly. Thank you, I whispered. When Margaret returned inside, I sat alone on the porch steps, the bread in my lap, the stars above me. I thought of my husband again. His steady voice, his unwavering eyes. Evelyn, he would have said, don't let them strip your dignity. Not after all you've given. I inhaled deeply, the night air filling my lungs. And for the first time that day, something shifted inside me. Yes, I was broken. Yes, I was humiliated. But beneath the cracks, a new steel began to form. I could not change Pamela. Her cruelty was hers alone. But I could choose what to do next. I stood slowly, steadying myself on the railing. The thought steadied me. The tears dried on my cheeks. I walked back home under the dim streetlights, the bread still in my hands. The house greeted me with silence once more. But this time, the silence did not swallow me. I set the bread on the counter, unwrapped it, and cut a slice. It tasted different now. Not bitter. Not sweet. But strong. Like fuel. Like resolve. As I chewed, I whispered to myself, they think they've erased me. But they've only awakened me. I went to my desk, pulled out the drawer, and found the folder where my husband kept his papers. It had been years since I touched it, but now my fingers trembled with purpose. Pamela wanted me small, invisible, silent, and this time I would not stop. The next morning, I woke with purpose. The humiliation of last night still lingered, but it no longer crushed me. It pushed me forward. I made coffee, dark and strong, and carried the steaming mug to my husband's old desk. The folder still lay there, the one I had pulled out. Its edges frayed the paper, yellowed with time. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling, but not with fear, with determination. Inside were bills, letters, insurance policies, a life's worth of paper. At the bottom, tucked neatly, was the envelope I had avoided. His will. I ran my hand across it, tracing the familiar handwriting. He had prepared everything carefully, like he always did. I opened it, the crackle of paper loud in the quiet kitchen. But then a note slipped free. Not typed, not formal, handwritten. Evelyn, it began. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. My breath caught. I pressed the note to my chest. He continued, I know Pamela. I know what she is capable of. And I know how easily our son can be swayed. My eyes blurred. He had seen it. Even before I admitted it to myself, I added a clause, he wrote. If they ever dishonor you, if they ever treat you as less, they forfeit their share. Do not tell them. Let their actions speak. I sat frozen, the note trembling in my hands. My husband had known. He had left me not only comfort, but protection. I whispered into the empty room, you were still protecting me, even from the grave. For a moment, I let myself cry. Not from weakness, but from the strength of his love. Then I dried my eyes. If this clause was real, then Pamela had just sealed her fate. But I needed proof. I needed to be certain. I picked up the phone, dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Martin Reynolds, a voice answered. My husband's old attorney. Martin, I said softly, this is Evelyn. A pause, then warmth. Evelyn, it's been too long. How are you holding up? I swallowed hard. Not well, Martin. I need your help. He grew quiet. What's happened? I told him everything. The empty birthday, the photos, Pamela's cruel toast, the note from my husband. He listened carefully, never interrupting. Finally, he said, Evelyn, your husband was wise. That clause is real. I witnessed it myself, but it must be documented. I'll bring the file tomorrow. Relief washed through me. Thank you, Martin. You don't know what this means. I do, he said firmly. And Robert would want you strong. When the call ended, I sat back, my coffee now cold. The pieces were falling into place. Pamela thought she held the power, but in truth, she had already lost it. Still, I wanted to understand. I wanted to know how long this had been brewing. So I began searching. I opened old drawers, pulled out cards, letters, receipts. I found a birthday card from 5 years ago, signed only with my son's name.
Pamela hadn't even written hers.
I found bank withdrawals, thousands at a time, always when Pamela had asked for help. I found notes from teachers' school schedules. I was never told about recitals I had been kept from. Every paper, every memory told the same story. This wasn't neglect. It was a plan, a careful erasure. I sat in silence, the evidence spread across the desk. The morning sun lit the papers as though revealing them after years in the dark. I whispered she wanted me gone. She wanted me erased. But Robert saw her. And now, so do I. I gathered the papers, tucked them neatly back into the folder. I wasn't just Evelyn, the forgotten mother. I wasn't the family ATM. I was Robert's wife, his chosen heir, and I still had a voice. The clock chimed noon. I stood tall, smoothed my blouse, and walked to the window. Outside, the world carried on. Children rode their bikes. A dog barked down the street. Life moved forward. And so would I. But not as their victim. Not anymore. The next evening, I called them. My son, Elliot. And Pamela. My voice steady, though my hands trembled after. Come by tomorrow, I said. We need to talk. There was silence on the line. Then Elliot answered, Sure, Mom. We'll stop by. Pamela's voice echoed faintly behind him. About time. I hung up, my heart pounding. This was it. The moment I had avoided for too many years. The following day, I baked again. Not bread this time. Just a simple roast chicken, carrots, potatoes. Not for celebration, for confrontation. By 6 o'clock, their car pulled in. Headlights sweeping across the yard, casting long shadows on the porch. I stood at the door, waiting. Pamela entered first, heels sharp on the floor. She scanned the room like she owned it. Elliot followed, hands in his pockets, eyes avoiding mine. Dinner smells nice, Pamela said, smiling thinly. Better than last night's bread, I'm sure. Her words stung, but I did not flinch. Sit, I said. They sat at the table, the same table that had stood empty on my birthday. I took my place at the head, my husband's seat once upon a time. For a moment, no one spoke. The clock ticked loudly, each second stretching. Finally, Elliot cleared his throat. So what's this about Mom? I looked straight at Pamela. You humiliated me. You erased me. And I will not stay silent anymore. Pamela leaned back, smirking. Oh, Evelyn, don't be so dramatic. It was just a joke. Everyone laughed. No, I said firmly. They didn't. And even if they had, mocking me as an ATM isn't a joke. It's the truth you've been living by. Her smile faltered just for a moment. I pressed on. You have stolen birthdays. You have hidden milestones. You've lied about schedules, moved parties, kept me out of holidays. Piece by piece, you cut me away. Elliot shifted uncomfortably. Mom, you're exaggerating. Am I snapped. I pulled a stack of papers from the folder beside me. Pamela's face tightened. Her eyes darted to Elliot, then back to me. Yes, I answered. And I found more than you ever wanted. I placed the handwritten note on the table. Pamela reached for it, but I pulled it back. You don't get to touch this. This was Robert's. My husband's. And his words matter more than your lies. I read aloud, my voice steady. If they dishonor you, if they treat you as less, they forfeit their share. Elliot's head snapped up. What dad wrote that? Pamela's face paled. She tried to recover, forcing a laugh. Evelyn, no one will believe that. It's just a scrap of paper. Wrong, I said. Martin Reynolds witnessed it. He's bringing the official file tomorrow. It's already protected. The room went still. Elliot's hands shook slightly. Pamela's smirk was gone. Last night you called me an ATM. In front of neighbors. In front of friends. You thought it made you powerful, but it didn't. It made you powerless. Because those words have consequences. Pamela's voice rose shrill and sharp. You can't do this. This house, this money, we need it. Elliot flinched. Her desperation cracked the mask. And for the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes. Not love, not respect, but dependence. He had let her feed him lies. He had let her build walls. And now those walls were crumbling. I stood slowly, placing both hands on the table. This ends now. No more lies. No more manipulation. If you want a mother, you treat me as such. If you want only money, you will have nothing.
Pamela opened her mouth, but no sound came.
Elliot stared at me, his lips parting, his eyes searching mine. But then Pamela touched his arm and the boy vanished, replaced by the man who had chosen her silence over my voice. I gathered the folder, pressed it to my chest. This is my home, I said. My life, my dignity. You cannot take it. Pamela stood abruptly, her chair scraping loud. This isn't over, she hissed. No, I replied. It's just beginning. She stormed out, heels striking hard against the floor. Elliot lingered, his face pale, his mouth opening, but no words coming. Finally, he turned and followed her. The door slammed shut. Silence returned. But this silence felt different. It felt like victory. A small one, but mine. I sank back into my chair, the note still in my hand. And for the first time in years, I felt Robert beside me. Strong. Proud. I whispered into the empty room I didn't love. I finally stood. The clock ticked on. The night stretched deep. But I no longer felt erased. I was here. And I was heard. The house was quiet after they left. I sat at the table, Robert's note in my hands, my heart pounding steady, not with fear, but with fire. They thought the battle was private, but it never was. Not after Pamela's cruel toast in front of the neighborhood, not after the whispers that followed. By morning, the phone rang. It was Margaret. Her voice was gentle but urgent. Evelyn, people are talking. About last night. About Pamela. My breath caught. What do you mean? She sighed. Word spreads fast here. Several guests from the dinner were appalled. They couldn't believe how she spoke to you. Some even recorded it. I froze. Recorded. Yeah, Margaret said firmly. Evelyn, you don't need to fight alone. People saw the truth. They know now. I pressed a hand to my chest. For so long I had carried the shame in silence, but now it was no longer mine alone. By afternoon, I stepped outside to fetch the mail. Two neighbors waved from across the street. One called out, "Stay strong, Evelyn. You deserve better." Their words startled me. I had expected pity. Instead, I found support. I walked back inside, my legs trembling, but my spirit lighter. Then another call. Martin Reynolds. Evelyn, he said, his voice steady. I've reviewed the files. The clause is airtight. If Pamela continues, she will lose everything. I closed my eyes, relief washing through me. Thank you, Martin. Thank you. But he wasn't finished. Also, he added, I heard something troubling. Pamela has been speaking loudly, boasting even, claiming she already controls your finances. My stomach twisted. Controls. Yes, Martin said. But she doesn't. Not legally. Still, it's dangerous for her to spread lies, and it only strengthens your case. I gripped the phone tightly. Pamela wasn't just cruel. She was reckless. And now her mask was slipping in public. That evening, I walked to the small grocery store. I needed milk, but more than that, I needed courage. As I entered, two women near the produce section looked up. They whispered, but not cruelly. One stepped forward. Evelyn, I was at Margaret's dinner. I heard what she said. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. The other woman added she thinks money is everything, but she lost respect last night. She lost us. I stood taller, my milk forgotten in my basket. Pamela wanted power. But power built on cruelty cannot last. Mom Pamela's furious. She says you embarrassed her. She says she won't forgive you. I stared at the words, my heart heavy. Forgiveness. As if it was hers to grant. I deleted the message. That night, I sat on the porch, the cool air brushing my face. For the first time in years, I did not feel invisible. People saw. People knew. And Pamela, she was unraveling. I whispered to Robert, to the night sky above love, she exposed herself. I didn't have to scream. She did it for me. A car drove by, slowly neighbors inside waving at me. Their smiles warm, their nods respectful. Pamela had tried to erase me, but now her own cruelty was the ink that wrote her downfall. I sat straighter, my voice steady in the dark. This isn't just survival anymore. This is justice. The next morning, the phone rang again.
Martin's voice was firm, quieter than usual, weighted with concern.
Evelyn, he said, I've gone deeper. Into the accounts. Into the records. My chest tightened. What did you find? A pause. Then words that chilled me. Pamela has been siphoning money. For months. Maybe longer? I gripped the receiver, my hand trembling. How? I whispered. She convinced Elliot. Martin continued. Told him it was temporary. That you wanted to help. But Evelyn, large sums are gone. Tens of thousands. My knees buckled. I sank into the chair, heart pounding in my ears. She told Elliot, you insisted on covering expenses. Vacations. Renovations. Her business ventures. I shook my head violently. No, I never said that. I know, Martin said. And I documented everything. Pamela signed on your behalf. Forged transfers. Even withdrew in cash. Sloppy work, but enough damage. My breath caught. Forgery. Fraud. And my son blind to it all. Evelyn Martin's voice softened. Your husband foresaw this. That's why he added the clause. He knew someone would try. And Pamela walked right into the trap.